Turn to you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Jazakallah khairah. Thank you so much, Sayyid Kashmiri. We'll turn to Sayyid Sulaiman Hassan Abadi for opening remarks for tonight's session.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. I will not take much time in these opening remarks. We want to leave as much time as possible to benefit from our esteemed ulama and also to hear from our participants and to address as many questions as possible. This is a forum which I think is a very blessed opportunity for us to reaffirm the values that define our religion and the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. Our difference with the remainder of the Muslim Ummah is that the following of Ahlul Bayt is based on their knowledge and their piety and their practice of and their knowledge of the teachings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so it is part of our identity to ensure that we are able to, part of our identity to ensure that we are always looking for and trying to practice the authentic knowledge of Islam. And in that regard, all of us, ulama, non-ulama, we are all students. But some of us have been blessed to be able to spend more time learning from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, and it becomes our obligation to share that knowledge with our fellow brothers and sisters. This is one forum, inshallah, where we will have an opportunity to learn from each other and to affirm those foundational values of Islam. There are a number of questions that have already been submitted, and participants are welcome to continue to submit their questions. We will do our best to address as many of them as possible. We're not going to be able to give comprehensive or perfect answers in a session like this, but the goal is to give certain key ideas of what the teachings of Islam are, where to go for further insight and enlightenment, and also to increase our thirst in order to continue to think about and to learn from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Inshallah, we will keep our answers as brief as possible while trying to convey the essence of the teachings of Islam as we have understood them. If we're not able to address certain questions today, then inshallah we will have further sessions where perhaps we can look at certain issues in greater depth and also address those questions that were not answered in this session. Thank you all for your participation. In particular, I thank the ulama for making the time for this important initiative in spite of busy schedules. You know that with Zoom, many people have a shorter commute and maybe have some additional time. But ulama now, they have a much wider audience and many more commitments that have come. So thank you for your participation. To all of our participants, thank you for joining us. Please share your feedback and your suggestions. We hope this will be a continuing initiative. So with that, inshallah, we can recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad and begin today's session. Sheikh Mahdi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Sayyid Sulaiman, for that introduction. To our dearest participants, just a reminder that we do have a forum that's available for you to ask your questions using Slido. The link is available in the chat function of the Zoom call, and it should also be available in the live stream YouTube and also in the informational emails that you received from your home masajid or Islamic organizations. So you're welcome to submit a question, and you're also welcome to like or upvote a question that may have been asked by another participant, and that way we'll try to focus our attentions on questions that may be of collective interest. Before we jump into our first round of questioning, I think we have a presentation from our dearest Sheikh Ammar Haydar. We'll hear from him for a few minutes, and then we'll turn to our panel of esteemed scholars, and we'll begin to address your questions. Sheikh Ammar, we turn to you. Sheikh Ammar, if you can hear me, you can go ahead and begin your remarks. Sheikh Ammar Haydar, can you hear my voice right now?
Maybe he is on mute.
So I can see that he's unmuted, but it's possible that he can't hear me, or it's possible that maybe his connection has a bit of a lag. What we can do then is perhaps if we're not able to hear from Sheikh Ammar, we can turn to a first round of questioning, inshallah, from our esteemed panelists. And there are a number of different questions, of course, in different themes. So I'll begin with one of the themes that we have, and that's the theme on family and marriage. There were questions that have to do with the beginning of marriage, and that have to do with encouragement of young marriage. So I'll ask a few of these questions, and I'd like the ulama to answer as concisely as possible, but also to speak on the different facets of these questions. The first question that was asked is, how can we change the culture in our households and communities to encourage young marriage? So respectfully, if any of the ulama would like to answer that, they're welcome to raise their hands and respond. And if not, I'll volunteer some of you just to get the ball rolling. Our dear Sheikh Jalil, we're so glad to have you with us. If you would do us the honor getting started in answering this question, we would appreciate it. How can we change the culture in our households and our communities to encourage young marriage?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm back. I'm sorry. I was a little bit disconnected, but now I am back. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakumullah, inshallah. So we'll come back, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Regarding to this question, first of all, I'm not sure what culture we're talking about. If we're talking about the culture of delaying marriage in Islam, we have a hadith that encourage early marriage. That is what Islam encourages. We have a hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that encourage us to get married as quick as possible. All right. But now, in regarding to how do we change culture, the first thing is we have to understand that to change culture, we have to go back to the teaching of the Holy Prophet. The Prophet tells us, I'm leaving two things behind you that if you are to hold upon them, you will never go astray. One is the Holy Quran, and the other one is the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So now, if any of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt disagree with any of our culture, then the culture should be put aside and act upon the teaching of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And the same thing applies to the Quran. So in order to end a cultural problem that we have at homes or community, we have to go back and use the Islamic culture, which was taught by the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So that is how we can eliminate that issue that we might have in our communities.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Abdul Jalil. A question that was also asked related to issue of marriage was how we can, the recommendations that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam make regarding marriage for one who is financially limited or has restrictions, how can we translate those values in today's world? If our respected Sheikh Rasul Nagawi or Sheikh Muslim Mahdi would be so kind as to respond.
Bismillah, Sheikh Rasul. So, can you repeat the question one more time?
Of course. It says, what are the recommendations of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam regarding marriage for an individual who is financially constrained? And how would we translate those values in today's world?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa bihi nasta'een innahu khayrun nasirin wa mu'in. So the question obviously can be responded in the light of the verses of Quran and in the light of Ahadith as well. There is a lot of emphasis upon getting married, regardless of the social, financial status a person has. Therefore, when we look at the verses of Quran and when we look at the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, a general criteria is that a person should not be fearful of his financial constraints when he or she is getting married. Because the second part of your question, I will come to that part later, that how to deal with the challenges. Of course, we need to get bread, we need to get a housing. There are some financial restrictions. However, at the very first place, when someone is looking for a spouse or someone wants to get married, what should be the criteria? We have several ahadith, a number of ahadith from the Prophet and other ma'sumin, that whenever you are looking to get married, do not look for the wealth of other spouse or the apparent physical beauty of the spouse, but look at the religiosity or the piety of the other partner. Because if you look for the wealth, it will go away. Very similarly, if you are looking the beauty, the word's beauty or the beauty which can be translated as a physical beauty, that will go away as well. However, if someone goes for the iman and the piety, this person will get all three. So this is the foundation of the criteria of choosing a spouse. Now, if a person in this world, there are certain challenges, how that person can deal with the challenges. The first and fundamental issue in that regard is having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the sustainer. And there should not be demands in terms of financial demands. And in another approach, when we go beyond that, tawakkul or reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the actual foundation, if we look at the other aspect as well, universally it's a fact when a person progress, when a person gets more experience in his field in the beginning, maybe a person is hired as an employee for a minimum wage, but with the work, with the effort, with hard work, this person goes to the position of CEO. So the first thing is having reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then I would say that continuous effort and having low expectation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes ways open, as Quran says, "Man yattaqillah," whosoever has reliance in Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaj'al lahu makhrajan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors which are unknown to him, which are not expected for him, and will bring sustenance for him from the sources he has never thought about.
Jazakumullah khaira. We have a few more questions relating to marriage. They can be maybe a little more quick fire. A question was asked, what is the ideal age to get married? And some good places to find a spouse. They were asking for recommendations. Sheikh Ammar, would you like to shed some light on this? Maybe some strategies or some tips?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah. First of all, thank you for your offer, but I'm sorry I don't have husband and wife currently to offer anyone. This question is for me, but well, the best age for marriage, I guess, according to recommendations of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, is as early as possible, means after bulugh, when a girl passes the age of, according to some Maraji, 9 and some Maraji say 12, 13. So basically after when girls think they're ready to marriage, this is the main thing. When they feel they're ready to marry. maybe it could be like age of 18, 19, 20. And the boys, when they think they're ready to marry in the age of close to 24, 23, 25, in this age, at their at the earliest possible time, because if they're not married, there's a big possibility to fall into the world of sin and looking towards namaharam and impermissible sites. So it's better if people can marry at the earliest possible. This is good. But the thing is, in this part, I think brothers and sisters should do research about the culture of different countries, how in other countries marriage happens and take place. So one of the best example I can put here it's like Iran. In Iran, young girls and boys, they get married early, very early, and they're mahram together, husband and wife. But there's a difference between aqd and they call a marriage ceremony, which is called arusi. So 2 years, 3 years, it could be, if they're ready early, so they can do in 1 year. So when they are married together, husband and wife, so they can be together, and the girls and boys, both sides know very well that I have a husband, I have a wife, and they're good. And in this time after aqd, they can prepare their life. So they can rent a home, or they can buy a home, or they can buy appliances and home and their necessities for the married life. In this 1 or 2 or 3 years, whenever they're ready, they're going to have a marriage ceremony. This is called in Arabic and Farsi arusi, and in Urdu they call shadi. So this is the best time to find a husband and wife as early as possible and do aqd. And in this period, know each other, prepare for your life. And when you're ready after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, Bismillah, go for marriage, inshallah. This is the best way recommended by Ahlul Bayt.
Jazakumullah. Jazakumullah. I found that being proactive, this issue of marriage is very important. As human beings, we're forgetful, and if you're like me, you procrastinate. Thinking about these things earlier on allows us an opportunity to prepare. And one good strategy I think that we can use is to think about what the end product looks like, what the result looks like. Who do we want to be when we're ready to establish a family, and what do we look for in a spouse? And working on that, throughout our youth, and some of these things may take years, allows us to be in the process of preparation. A question was asked before we shift gears out of the topic of marriage. About what are the...
Mahdi, if I
Yes.
add one more point here.
Of course.
And since we are on the topic, I think one of the important points that our youth need to pay attention when they are getting ready to get married is that instead of paying a lot of attention to their partner, I think one step needs to be done prior to thinking about your spouse, is that to know yourself. Like in many of our, like if I ask many of our youth that, okay, so you're looking for your spouse, do you know what you want? Do you know yourself? Do you know your own interest? Like, I think that is the step that we sometimes ignore. So I think knowing what I'm going to do with my life, knowing my own interests, knowing the plan that I have before going and understanding my spouse is a step that sometimes we ignore. So I think, as you mentioned, that this is a topic that we need to plan ahead. One thing that we need to do is that think about yourself more, try to understand yourself more before coming about knowing and basically finding your spouse.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much, Sheikh Rasul. A question was asked, Sayyid Suleiman, with regards to this. What are some of the key traits that parents, a father and mother, can look in a potential suitor that seeks their daughter's hand according to Islam?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think we've had a lot of insightful answers in this topic of marriage. And so just very briefly to add a few thoughts. First of all, parents often think that their children may not have a good sense of what an appropriate spouse would be like. And sometimes children think that their parents don't have a good idea of what's truly important, or their parents are cultural and not looking about, according to Islamic values. So the first thing is to have good communication. The parents need to listen as well as try to advise children. And children also need to have patience and not dismiss something that their parents may say as prejudiced or backwards or cultural, as opposed to an Islamic idea. That doesn't mean that you're always going to agree. That means that you're going to try to achieve greater understanding and approach each other with humility. Having said that, parents should be looking to guide their children, especially as the ulama have said, Islam encourages early marriage. Well, when you're marrying early, you need a greater involvement of parents and other elders to help make a good decision. The most important attribute, of course, is taqwa and piety, but you also want to make one slight difference from culture that I think is predominant in America. Many of you are familiar that in America, people say, how can I marry somebody if I don't know them well? We haven't known each other for months or years, and maybe even had a very close relationship. But in reality, success in life, it's not based on the details of how well you know somebody else. It's based on the big questions. So look at the person's akhlaq, look at the person's values, on the big questions of life. What's truly important? What is the role of family? What is the role of God in the person's life? How do they approach their interpersonal relationships with mutual respect? And then, is somebody a morning person or a night person? Do they put the toilet roll from above or from below? These kinds of questions that you'll find in magazines to get your personality. This is one way that our modern secular individualist culture boxes us up. And it makes us a caricature of a true human being. Be expansive. If you get the big questions right, inshallah, the small questions will take care of themselves, and life is unpredictable, and it's designed by God to be unpredictable. And that's why we rely on Allah for guidance and for inspiration. So those are the most important things. And I think that's one area where modern Western culture is actually diametrically opposed to what brings a successful union in marriage.
Thank you very much. We'll shift gears now. Inshallah, there was a lot of good advice shared, and for the younger ones who may be interested in seeking marriage, or those who may not be as interested right now, or perhaps even a little, turned off or disillusioned or frustrated, working together, being open in communication, and obviously keeping one's hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah has told us that this is of His signs, and that there is a great comfort that is found in this union, and that affection and mercy will be ordained between them. If we can shift gears, moving towards relationships within families, we have questions that are here with regards to how we can conduct ourselves within the family and within our social groups. A question is, how do we build an Islamic environment in the home? And more than that, how can we be compassionate towards individuals that we may feel annoyed with at times because of their conduct, the way that they organize their affairs, or perhaps the way that they communicate with us? Sheikh Jalil, can we hear from you? And then Sayyid Akhlaq, if you can also share with us.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, we got to understand that in family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can test you with your brother or your sister or your wife or your mother or your sister, anybody. There is an ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that is how we made some of you to be test, to some of you within the family to see how patient you're going to be. Okay, so sometimes if you look at throughout the history, all of these example is there. Now, if you are the father, you know, Allah already told you, إِنَّمَا أَزْوَاجُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ fitna. It's your test. All right, now it's up to you to see how am I going to work myself to pass these tests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, that is number one. Number two, we also have to know that Islam has akhlaq of how to treat people who are annoying you. Okay, number one, you gotta understand, don't let people annoy you. Because when you let people annoy you, you give them control on your life. So they get the key to you. Whatever they want to get you upset, they know what button to press. No, don't give people that opportunity to control you. No, you be you and be control of yourself. Now, how do you do that? Number two, understand the importance of patience in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so many places, Inna Allah ma'a as-sabirin. That's number one. And number two, get to understand the danger of being angry too. Because even when you look at the Quran, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam, even though his anger was okay, but what did Quran says? وَظَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. Mughadiban, from the word ghadab, and that is how we get him to. So we should look at these examples from the Prophet and then from the Imams, how they were able to deal with their enemies, with the people they cannot stand, right? So that is number two. Number three, also we have to understand that things like that is need a little training. Okay, you need a little training, self-training. How do you train yourself? Now, for example, instead of me being angry and negative at someone that know, oh, he's gonna annoy me right now. No, at least give yourself a positive thinking. Oh, inshallah, how you doing? You know, with the positive thinking, when the person says something, don't even take it, because sometimes people might not mean harm when we take it as harm. All right, people might not mean to, for example, annoy us, but we take it that way. So make positive thinking. When you see the person, you think positive. Try to deal with the person in the best way. All right. And that is number two. Number three. And number four, I would say also, is very important. Very important for our own health. Don't let stress of somebody become your burden. Okay? It might be a little one as you see it. It's like a glass of water. You carry it first, it's not heavy, right? But as you take time, what do you call hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, then it started to become heavier on you. So don't give this opportunity to others to hurt your own health when you are angry or annoyed by people. Okay, it's good to exercise yourself and be happy, and inshallah things will go fine.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Shalil. Sheikh Rasul, a point here about a family, Islamic family identity.
Yes, I think part of the question was about like creating the identity for Islamic family, for our Islamic family, especially during this time. And I think one of the main things that in creating Islamic identity can help us is creating rituals for our family. What do I mean by rituals is that every family is different. So I think try to find something which works in your family, whether there is the ritual of recitation one page of Quran between your Maghrib and Isha prayer, whether it is the recitation of Dua al-Nutba or Dua al-Kumail or Dua Tawassul, any days that works for you, whether it is the recitation of one hadith and the translation of it, whether listening to a lecture online, or what I'm trying to say is that one of the best way of creating and preserving Islamic identity within our families is to be creative in actually creating rituals. So if you're able to create rituals, I think you can preserve that Islamic identity.
Jazakumullah khaira. It's very well said. I remember colleagues of mine and families that would at least have one or two activities that they would always do as a family, either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. Everyone would get together for supper. They would at least offer one set of prayers together, and afterwards recite a dua or recite a Quran, and that became a staple of their family program and their family religious rituals. Thank you so much, Sheikh Rasul. Sayyid Akhlaq, I'd like to hear from you on the same issue of relationships, of dealing with people that may not necessarily agree with us, they may annoy us, establishing strong bonds.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, one very, very important aspect of Islam is that the acknowledgement of the diversity in family, in community, in neighborhood. And we see even in the household of the Prophet, every Prophet, particular or Prophet, peace be upon him and his families, and Imam alayhim salam. So that's a very important duty of Muslim to relate each other respectfully, no matter how much they are in agreement or disagreement. Of course, we will try in best way to do Amr Ma'ruf, Nahi az Munkar, and all a religious duty, but it doesn't mean that we have to be on the same road with everybody. So we have to show respect to the free will of each one of us and be respectful. And as we learn from our Ayyimma alayhim salam, we have to spread the good word, the word of God, by our action, by our attitude, by our love to our families, by show respect. A lot of our families, particularly kids, they going away from house because they don't see respect and the kind of love that they expect, particularly in Western culture. We mostly have a background in Eastern culture that we love our families in our hearts, and we don't express it. But Imam Sadiq alayhi salam told us, and that's a good thing, that always we share our love with our families, even if they don't agree with a lot of things that we are doing. And we have to be wise that always there is ups and downs. So maybe sometimes our kids or brothers, sister, uncles, or friends are not agreeing with us, not listening to us, not following the right path. But it doesn't mean that we have to break with them and separate ourselves. That's my point with regard to keeping off.
I think we have this in our tradition, this emphasis on strengthening of the bond, and even more so, the detriment of seizing relationships. And that's one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the tradition is extremely sensitive towards, that we not be the one who initiate a break within relationships with especially members of the family, extended relatives. Even if they wrong us, there's something so powerful and important about remaining connected even in times of conflict and difference, that we're able to persevere and kind of work together through the problem. One of the, I think, invaluable life lessons that I'm learning, not that I've completely learned, is maybe sometimes thinking about the difference between being right and being effective in communication. A lot of times we feel that because we are in the right and we are sharing a truth, then the person has to accept, process, and they need to articulate that truth. And that needs to be first done before we can move forward. And I think we find within wise practice efficacy of taking a precedent in many times, especially when it comes to the strengthening of relationships and of the reconstruction and rebuilding of relationships, truth versus efficacy. Sheikh Muslim, there was also a number of questions that were asked that we'd like to ask before we kind of transition out of this topic of family and relationships. The questions that were asked about, what are some good halal activities, religious activities that we can do within our families, with our spouses, with friends, any good halal recreational activities? And of course, this question is complexified during this time, but what recommendations do you have?
It's an excellent question. I would say a lot of times our kids, especially growing up here, where it's very difficult to find halal lazat, they ask what activities we can engage in, especially with all this COVID and other things when you cannot travel. Otherwise, the first thing I would say take your family on a trip, take a camper, or just go somewhere on a smoky mountain or somewhere else. So nowadays, there are some restrictions. Uh, uh, and aside of the kidding, the first thing is we need to know that what is halal ladhat or actual true ladhat or true pleasure in Islam is. And I will be very concise and brief in that when Quran talks about the true pleasure. Indeed, Quran says that Ridwanu min Allahi Akbar, that beyond and on top of every pleasure is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the best and the highest level. But when we talk about the lazat or the pleasures of this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a society and the family in which we are living. And if we value the family itself is one of the greatest source of pleasures when we sit together with our parents, our siblings. And in fact, the family and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed those with the faithful families. They should appreciate that. And when we look at, and I am mindful of the verse in Surah Al-Furqan where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes the supplication taught to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Ibrahim, that what to pray for. And he says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. So the best of the offspring, the best of the family, faithful in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the best of the pleasures. And in terms of seeking pleasures, there is no restriction in Islam. Whatever halal pleasure a person can have, it's the best. One thing which I would like to emphasize upon in a very short manner, there are multiple ahadith in the teachings of the Prophet and other ma'sumin, where they put a lot of emphasis upon division of your timing. So divide your 24/7. For instance, some ahadith would say divide your portions 24/7 or 24 hours to 3 portions. Sometimes they would say 4 portions. So there are a number of ahadith. If we try to summarize, one portion is related to your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you pray, where you lament, where you cry, where you seek Allah's nearness by performing rituals, dua, supplications, and the worship. Other is for you to acquire your sustenance, go work outside, earn some money, and engage yourself in earning halal livelihood. And the third portion, the version of hadiths which are talking about the 3 portion, and some which are talking about the other 4 portions, 1 portion is designated to your halal ladhat, in addition to your rest and sleeping. And some of the hadiths, they would literally says that this is the best time for your portions of 24/7 in which you seek halal ladhat, halal pleasures, because they give you a boost. They make you recharge for your ibadat. Otherwise, a person gets tired praying day and night. So there should be a balance. There are halal ladhat, but we have to find out that what are those halal ladhat. So visiting family, staying with them, going outside, having some fun in the nature, reading books. So it depends how we tame ourselves. There are many around us which we can engage in and ourselves. But I would emphasize again that the family itself is one of the staying with the family and spending time with them with a faithful family is best of the pleasures.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much. Again, I think for a lot of younger people and maybe even olders, they find the ladha, the pleasure, or even fun activities sometimes as a means to try to relieve some stress. I think that if, again, being proactive and thinking about our pleasurable activities, if we can maximize our benefit from that in being in each other's company, in being in nature, perhaps doing something of physical exercise, or even if we're playing games or watching a movie, something that we feel after we're done that we've gained something, not just used it as a means to blow off steam, so to speak. We'll inshallah just take a brief break from the questions and our esteemed panelists. We'll turn now to our dearest Sheikh Ammar Haydar. He has a short presentation for us. We ask him to, inshallah, share that with us before we return to your questions, inshallah, and the responses of our panelists. Sheikh Ammar, we turn to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Haj Mahdi. How many minutes I have for this session?
Just a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, in this 4 or 5 minutes, there's a beautiful hadith without any preface. I just go to the discussion. It's like 8:12, so I'll try to finish in 4 to 5 minutes, inshallah. There's a beautiful hadith from Imam Raza salamullah alayhi, where he says, Rahimallahu abdan ahya amrana. May Allah bless the one who keeps my mission alive. And someone asked from Imam, فَقُلْتُ لَهُ, I mean, the narrator says, كَيْفَ يُحْيِي أَمْرَكُمْ? Oh Imam, how is possible? How can we make your mission alive? So Imam replied to him, قال عليه السلام يتعلم علومنا ويعلمها الناس فإن الناس لو علموا محاسن كلامنا لاتبعونا. Imam replied, learn completely and correctly our teachings and values and then expand it to the people. How? By the means of teaching and living upon it. Then because of this, people by knowledge and deeds of you followers will know how beautiful our sayings are. So in this beautiful hadith, and then Imam says, and how our teachings are applicable to their lives and will definitely follow us. So when we show the teachings of Ahlul Bayt and Rasulullah and indeed Quranic science by our actions and by our deeds and our knowledge to the people, and when people see in our actions living Islam, there's how I was listening is a beautiful story. A lady said the lady was very sick and she was lying down in her apartment. She was about to die. A Muslim lady went to see her and helped her and cooked food for her and gave her a good service, and she came back to the life. So at the end, the Muslim lady told to that lady, should I bring you the book Quran, because what I did, this is the teachings of my religion, my book. That lady said to this lady, I don't need Quran. I saw Quran in your attitude. I saw Quran in your life. So this is a very key example. We are living in a West and we have certain duties. Prophet Muhammad is not among us. Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman is not among us. Imam Zaman or Imam Raza and Ahlul Bayt are not among us. We are the ambassadors of our Imam. And as Imam was ambassador of Rasulullah, and Rasulullah was the ambassador of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people are going to see Islam in our attitude. So if we have to learn Islam very good, when we have to marry, how we have to deal with each other, and how we are going to raise our kids in West. So it's all big questions. These are all big questions. How we should relate ourselves to our scholars. The same way when we need to make a home, we go to find an engineer. The engineer is going to build our home. When we are in trouble, in problems, and we are sick, we are going to find a specific doctor for a special disease or for a specific disease. So when time comes for religion and application of religious values in our life, we have to consult scholars and we have to go and ask them in this particular problem, how we are going to find a solution. What is the time of marriage when we are going to marry? Okay, now we are married and we have kids. Some people, they don't know how to name their kids, and they give their names a very inappropriate names. No, we have according to a hadith of Ahlul Bayt, Imam Ali or Imam Sadiq salamullah alayhi says the best names are the names of prophets. So we can call our kids like Isa, like Musa, like Adam, like Ibrahim, Ismail. So there, in every part of our life, Islam has a recommendation, and we have to learn that recommendation. There's a beautiful hadith from Rasulullah when it says, "Arba'atun talzamu kulli dhi haji wa aql min ummati." There are 4 things. All knowledgeable and mu'min and mutadayyin and people of intellect should know these points. And then Ravi said, "Qila ya Rasulullah," or some people ask from Rasulullah, "Qila ya Rasulullah, ma hunna?" What are those things? Rasulullah said, "Qala istima'ul ilm." Listen very carefully. Istima' means listen with attention, carefully. istima'ul ilm, and then وحفظه, and then protect this knowledge, write it in a book, keep it with yourself, and then وَنَشْرُهُ, and then now expand this, translate this hadith, translate this Quran. You know, why you're doing this? What I always say, if you want to, if someone asks you in Iran, in America, what is your faith? What is your religion? You simply can say, just go and find a beautiful book. This book is called Qualities of Shia from Sheikh Saduq. There are 70, 80 hadiths in detail explains who are Shia. It's an extremely beautiful book. If you give this book as a gift to anybody, he's completely going to think, what Islam is? Islam is what a beautiful religion is Islam. They are going to love Islam because this is a teaching of Ahlul Bayt. And then Rasulullah said, وَنَشْرُهُ وَالْعَمَلُ بِهِ, and learn it, spread it to the people, and act according to your knowledge, what you learn from scholars from Quran and Ahlul Bayt. Inshallah ta'ala, this is in 5 minutes in summary of this.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much, our dear Sheikh Ammar. We turn back to our questions that are continuing to be submitted. Thank you so much to our participants for continuing to add their questions. We want to shift gears now, and we have many questions that may kind of fall within some of the categories that we have already covered, but we will also have hopefully a quick fire session towards the end to answer some of the outstanding questions. But considering the what is happening in the world and what's happening in the country, and the fact that today we all witnessed, or at least the country as a whole witnessed, the inauguration of the new president, Joseph Biden, and what has been happening over the last few months, the implications of political life, what it means domestically, what it means internationally, and our responsibilities as Muslims to respond. We've had many questions and we've had many requests for clarity and guidance in this regard. So on this question, what societal political activities should we be involved in as Muslims? What is our approach? What is our strategy? Sheikh Rasul, would you like to open up the discussion, perhaps with some general advice?
Thank you, sir, very much, Sheikh Mahdi. Yeah, I think I can start with like a general advice as I'm thinking, and then we can go into the details. I would say any political engagement has to have the following 4 criteria. I just came up as I saw the question, so it's not very accurate. This could be 5, could be 3. But as I just saw the question, I came up by these 4. But probably we can add or to find a better clear answer. Number 1 is that any political engagement that we need to have as Muslims has to have a positive goal. Because like what I mean is that people in this country need to know that we Muslim, if we want to change anything internally or internationally, the bigger goal is serving. We are not destroying something for the sake of destroying. We want to serve. That's the goal. We want to, in internal problems, we want to serve the people of this country. That should be clear. That's the purpose. Imam Mahdi Ajallallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif is coming. Why? He wants to serve people. That should be clear. I think that's number 1. So the goal, serving goal, we need to be clear in that. And number 2 is the authenticity of the message according to our Islamic values. Some of the activities are political activism that we see outside is just not going along with the message that we want as Muslims. So I think that number 2 is authenticity, and the authenticity of the message that this political movement, any political movement is carrying. And number 3 is the long-term effect on Muslims who live in the US. I think that's something that we ignore when we talk about internal politics. So when you're seeing the long-term effects, that means that any political activity that is coming from foreign countries, whether it is Pakistan or Iraq or I don't know, Saudi Arabia or Russia or China, in the long term, it's not gonna be for the benefit of us Muslims in this country. And number 4 is the problem-solving approach in our political engagement. So I see religion, not only Islam, all of the religions in the world, as I see them around the table in this country, that if there is a problem on the table, religious people around the table come together to provide solution for that problem. So any political engagement that we as Muslim have has to also have a problem-solving approach. So I think these 4 points comes to my mind as we are talking about political engagements of Muslim in this country.
Jazakumullah khaira. Sheikh Abdul Jalil, question was asked, of course, with the new administration assuming office today, everyone in the country, every group, major, minor, will have or will make demands, obviously, on the government in exchange for their cooperation, their support. What is it that you think the Muslims should place, what demands should Muslims place on this new administration, both domestically, internationally? And to add on to that, what should be our scholarly assessment, our thought, our action on the recent socio-political events that have happened, especially the attacks on the Capitol? What does it say about our approach, our strategy, maybe our preparedness to engage politically and socially at this time?
Thank you very much. But I would say, with all the honesty, I think this question is supposed to be answered by our Maraja. It's not somebody like me to tell somebody you can get involved or you cannot get involved, because this is a position that a Marja can make that decision for us. But what I can say generally, when we talk about the politics, we as a Muslims, we have to define what politics are we talking about? Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about any politics that is out there for the sake of politics, which is based on injustice, misleading, killing, on injustice, and all of these? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about the politics of a system that is based on the righteousness, on the truth and justice? Which one? Because if we're talking about a government that is based on injustice, Quran already told you and I. It said, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Quran was clearly saying that. Now, you can also go back to our teachers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, where our Imam told his companion Safwan al-Jamal with Harun al-Rashid, when he told him, don't get involved in this dirty politics with this guy. All right. So we have to make sure that when we talk about the politics, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about a politics or a government that is trying its best to do the right thing, or the government that is established on injustice and bloodshed and innocent life being, you name it? Is that what we're talking about? Now, for this, I believe that we have to go to the marja and get the fatwa from the marja to give us the permission whether I can get access in this or I cannot. Because the Quran tells you, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. Do not lean at those who happen to be unjust, then the fire will touch you too, in terms of when you come closer to this kind of people. So we have to be very careful what politics we're talking about and what politics we supposed to get in. And especially, we have to get our opinion of Maraja in this matter so that we clear and making sure that we get into which one and which one. Yes.
Jazakumullah khaira. Yeah, I think this again touches on an important point of creating cohesion And I know for many younger folk that I've been in conversation with, sometimes they find this a difficult idea to wrap their head around. Going and seeking counsel from someone who may not understand the context of the socio-political situation that they're living in. But I've always tried to be positive and supportive of the fact that we work together as a collective, and that for us to be able to seek guidance, it of course is important that our living circumstances are understood, our own personal emotions, our needs are accounted for. But again, the importance of communication. We know that the prophets, peace and blessings be upon them, and the imams, alayhimus salam, their ability to guide the people in that pristine way was, of course, because of divine support. But other than that, we have to build networks of communication and understanding that allows each of us to support one another in ways that maximizes our abilities to live out our duties as Muslims, but also engage in our societies. That may seem like a bit of a frustrating step to take. It may seem like a step backwards, but it's always been the most fruitful way of being able to maximize each of our contributions, to try to break away and think of ourselves simply as a local, broken from the global, I think belies the larger point that we're trying to make in affecting change within society. So thank you for that point, Sheikh Abdul Jalil. Sayyid Akhlaq?
Sheikh, may I add something?
Of course.
Sorry. Actually, from the Marja'iyya perspective, I would like to ask everyone to visit our website, imam-us.org. There are 3 short videos with text statements from Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani in this regard that's available. There's a title called From Marja. Whatever we can see from Marja, we posted there. There's good guidance and outlines there. And regarding the engaging with the socio-political lives, it's clearly, as Samahati Sheikh mentioned, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. There is no discussion about that. The point is, I think, beyond than that. It is not association with dhulm and oppression. Definitely, that is not the topic. The topic is you as a Muslim citizen. You are part of this country, wherever you be, in any country in the world, you have obligations toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a faithful person, and also toward your country. In Islam, there is so many texts asks you, puts responsibility on you to defeat and support your country and be positive person there, positive and taking a positive role in that. I think we as a Muslim community in this country, as other countries as well, we have to encourage our youth to establish their own association with guidance and giving specific advice from elders to play their role as a Muslim citizens and under the guidance of the Maraja. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khaira. Important points. I think, as mentioned, maybe one of the proactive steps that can be taken, or maybe it's reactive by this point, is perhaps to educate ourselves on some of the structural underpinnings of what it means to be engaged in politics, what it means to be engaged in the political process of the modern nation state, what that means, putting into conversation with our Islamic tradition, maybe some basic education at a community level on political science, understanding government, some civics, and understanding at least how the law and how the government works in this country can be a great step in the right direction. And I'll be so bold as to say that I think the Ahlul Bayt will not take offense or be upset if perhaps maybe we dedicate a part of those times that we spend on sharing their, obviously, their virtues and for us to increase our love in them, or even in other religious activities that we may have at a community level, to also participate in these types of educational endeavors so that we understand with some more clarity and for it to be a little bit more calculated, the way that we do engage and even the way that we do participate in the communication of what our struggles are with our religious scholars, leadership, and marja'iyya. Inshallah, may Allah protect them and hasten their lives and all those who serve the cause of Islam. Sayyid Akhlaq, we know, of course, that engagement in the realm of any social change, politics, be the government, a government that is oppressive, superficially, or it is deeply rooted in a ideology of oppression, or no, it is one that is aspiring towards peace and aspiring towards equity, but for whatever reasons may have its problems, it may have corruption. Entering into that world, of course, is not black and white. It brings about a lot of risk, and it also brings about the ability to nuance. We just, in the last few days, commemorated the day of Martin Luther King, a revered figure in the contemporary history of this country, and a figure, if we can say, has been appropriated very much. But we even see in figures like that are revered, perhaps positions that they made, statements that they made that we may not sit well with our religious beliefs. You know, there have been maybe pro-Israel comments, or maybe comments that are made in support of oppressive governments, that Muslims hear that or read that, and it may conflict them. So how should we engage not only in this realm, but what do we do after entering this realm where people may say things or may hear things, may support things that we are not necessarily supportive of? Do we take an all or nothing approach? Do we try to nuance? How do we walk that tightrope?
Great, very, very great question. I wanted to summarize as much as possible. So actually, we have to think of kind of compromise, because we have to not be a perfectionist. So we don't need to look at the people as the role model. The only role model for us is Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So if the number of the infallible ma'sumins are limited, it means the only role model are limited. Any other people have their own limitation and their flaws. So of course, after Ahlul Bayt and after Ma'sum, we always look at al Maraji and Ulama and great scholar, but always even great Ulama is saying, okay, they are important and they are authorized as much as they are following Ahlul Bayt. So this means that when we are talking about non-Muslim or about a civil rights activist or leader, we have to look at their cause, not as the somebody to look what they think about other aspects. This is my point. Always I'm talking when to my community, I'm talking about the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, when he was involved in Payman Hilf al-Fuzul or Hilf al-Fuzul treaty. So what it tells us that Prophet was part of that, and when he became as a prophet, he said, if I have the same opportunity, I will join the Hilf al-Fuzul. Hilf al-Fuzul was just to help poor people, oppressed people, and fight against injustice situation. So it doesn't mean that the other partner of the Prophet Muhammad, when he joined Hilf al-Fuzul, were perfect with regard all causes. They just were perfect with their cause of pursuing justice and fighting against oppression. So with regard to this issue, I'm thinking when we are talking about the great people like Martin Luther King or some other activists, always will look at positive aspect and support them. And of course, we have to let our people that we don't agree with all things that they are supporting. We are supporting with this limitation with regard to this cause.
Thank you so much, Sayyid Akhlaq. We often get this question that within the realm of politics, some Muslims believe that politics is antithetical to Islam, is not a part of Islam. Muslims should not engage in politics. It's dirty. And if Islam enters that realm, it always gets corrupted. There are, of course, Muslim majority countries or governments that are rooted within either Islamic belief or have government systems set up, constitutions set up that is informed by the Islamic tradition. Obviously, like all things on this earth, they are not perfect and they may have major failings. How do we how do we negotiate that? Is there a double standard perhaps? And one of the major questions that is always asked revolves around the idea of wilayat faqih. So a question was also asked from our participant about wilayat faqih. How do we explain this idea, this theory? Is it rooted within the Islamic belief? And what should, again, our attitude be in being in relationship with it, or maybe not even being in relationship with it? So this is obviously a very complex question. I'd like to ask a few of our panelists to engage. Maybe Sayyid Akhlaq, you can get us started, and then we can perhaps hear from Sheikh Rasul, Sheikh Sulaiman, or Sheikh Abdul Jalil if they would be kind enough to also comment.
Sure. That's a good idea to keep in mind that wilayat faqih is one theory in Shia Islam. That's one theory. So we have to look at the issue from the viewpoint of marja taqlid. And also we have to keep in mind that it's not very relevant to our community. All marja taqlid are saying that the understanding the subject, mawzu, tashkhis al-mawzu, is up to the muqallid. So we have to understand if there is something relevant to the issue. So that's not the duty of our marja to tell us what's the exact subject here and how. They just tell us the hukm, what is Islamic, what is not Islamic. So these are two tips that I'm saying. Look at what your marja is saying about wilayat al-faqih. And then second, keep in mind that where you're living, is it relevant to our life or it's not relevant? As I understand that for many years, I taught Ayatollah Khomeini idea of wilayat al-faqih. It's not relevant to our community. It's relevant to the community that people go and vote for wilayat al-faqih. So I think it's not very relevant. That's my idea, but I would like to hear from other ulama and they develop the issue.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much, Sayyid Akhlaq. Sayyid Sulaiman, this question is, as people living in this country, maybe we're not living in a Muslim majority country, what should our responsibility be towards this idea?
Thank you for a wonderful discussion that's been continuing. I'd like to begin actually with a question that was asked earlier. I think it relates to the question of our political participation about the formation of our Islamic identity. And one thing that we do is we need to actively create parts of our day that are recognizably Islamic, not just in terms of ritual practice, but also in terms of art and aesthetics, in terms of culture, so that we can identify with Islam as a value system and as a code of practice and as a way of life, but also as a civilization, which encompasses all parts of our being. And one of the things that we need to do is not only do we need to make sure that our actions conform to Islam, meaning right now, if I had a habit of gambling, I need to stop gambling because it's haram. If I used to enjoy a haram food because I was non-Muslim or I was a non-informed Muslim or a non-practicing Muslim, and I find out that, for example, a food is haram, I need to stop eating that food. But another process is also important, which is that things that we already do, whether or not we're Muslim, we need to do it because we're Muslim. So some people say that, for example, loving your kids is not an issue of Islam. That's just a human issue. Muslims love their kids and atheists love their kids. And that's absolutely wrong. An atheist loves their kids because that's human nature. A Muslim loves their kids because we believe that God created this fitrah within us, this nature within us, for a divine purpose, so that we can establish a legacy of tawheed, so that there can be another soul, as famous hadith says, تُثْقِلُ الْأَرْضَ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, that it brings barakah to and blessing to the earth through tawheed. So what am I saying? One, I change my behavior to be recognizably Muslim. Two, I keep my behavior, but I change my intention. So I was going to brush my teeth anyway because I don't want to have bad breath. I was going to already have a family, but now I do so not because it's my hygiene or it's my habit or my material interest. I do so for the sake of Allah. And that is what we as Muslims believe politics is. So when people say, should Muslims be involved in politics, and many of these questions, because they're thinking of politics in that limited sense, it becomes a controversial question. That in the famous hadith of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that this was what Muawiyah did, tilka nakra, tilka shaytana. And that's what we think of as politics. That's not politics. That kind of pseudo-aql and that kind of politics, that is something that it's not aql and it's not what a Muslim can conceive of as politics. We have similar kinds of misconceptions when it comes to wilayatul faqih. So people think that this is some kind of, unusual theory. There are differences of opinion among fuqaha as to the limits and the extent and the nature of wilayatul faqih, but it's a legal question. And let's be honest, in America, what percentage of people has historically constituted the electorate? Until the civil rights movement, until women's enfranchisement, what percentage of people was the electorate? And even today, when we have a universal franchise, what percentage of people actually can vote and what percentage of people do vote? So if a president wins an election with a landslide victory of, say, 60%, then in terms of the actual population, even the adult population, that might only be 30% of the adult population of the United States that has won an election in a quote unquote landslide. That's wilayat. Because in effect, you're saying that the decision of that 30% is going to be enforced on the 70% who did not have the right to vote or did not choose to exercise it, or future generations who are going to be affected by the pollution or the war or whatever other good or bad policies are made, but don't even exist. So wilayat is just the nature of management of human affairs. The question is, who has that wilayat? And as a mu'min, we believe that Allah, His Prophet, and the Ma'soom, intrinsically only they have wilayah because they know exactly where and how to use it. And then some portion of that has been delegated to a non-Ma'soom because in the end we need to have a society. And fuqaha have different opinions about the extent of that. But don't think of that in terms of controversy. Don't think of that in terms of what separates. Think of that in terms of the essence of any system of administration. You have wilayat in America. It's not wilayatul faqih. It's not wilayatul uqala. It's not even wilayatul akthariya. It's simply the portion of the electorate that has the franchise, which doesn't include many people who should have the franchise. In some states, it doesn't include, for example, people who used to be incarcerated. As you know, what's going on in Florida right now. So when Muslims understand what is the actual nature of the issue, we can have a discussion of what the different opinions are, but it's not going to be controversial and it's not going to be sensitive because it's not going to be a political discussion. It will be an intellectual discussion. It will be a religious discussion, and it will be an enlightening discussion for our communities. Now, I know that we're limited on time, so that's where I will conclude for now, but inshallah we'll have other opportunities to discuss that.
May I thank you so much for your words. I think this type of very, very sensitive and controversial topics, it is unfair to discuss about it 5, 6, or 10 minutes. I would like to suggest for my colleagues, if possible, next time, let us designate 2 hours discussion about just one topic so we can fulfill it and complete it. What do you think about that?
Certainly, inshallah, from this we can follow up with specialized fora for some of these questions that are coming up and that many people have in their minds, inshallah.
Because I'm sure here all colleagues, ulama scholars, they have their own words they want to say it, and as well, our audience, they have a lot of questions in this. Since I'm engaged with community and I hear and I receive questions from them. So not only this, about marriage, I seen a lot of questions here on the monitor and about other topics. Maybe we designate 1.5 hours or 2 hours for one topic just to give a picture of it. Thank you so much.
Inshallah, jazakumullah.
Allah,
Sheikh Abdul Jalil, would you like to share some comments, and then maybe Sheikh Ammar also would like to share?
Quickly, I just wanted to add something on what was asked about the Wilayat al-Faqih. I think this is a very important topic. It needs to be discussed, and not only discussed, it needs to be discussed in depth as well. Because there is a lot of misconception about Wilayat al-Faqih, especially in our communities and everywhere you go, when you travel in East Africa, in Canada, you go to a program, people pose this question to you. But one thing that we have to understand is Wilayat al-Faqih does not mean taking other marajah's position of being marjas. No. That is something we have to be very clear, which means every marja stays marja taqleed, like normal. Wilayat al-Faqih is mainly about choosing one voice for Muslims who speaks on behalf of Muslims in that sense. Because a lot of us, we think when somebody becomes Wali al-Faqih, it means that others are not qualified. No, it doesn't mean like that. Okay? It always have to be one voice that speak on behalf of everybody. Now, for example, if you look at the time of the Prophet, there was Rasulullah was there, was Imam Ali was there, Imam al-Hassan was there, Imam al-Hussein was there, all of them. All of them are qualified leaders, but as long as Rasulullah was there, he was the only voice speaking. And all of them were followers, not because they're not qualified, not because they don't know anything. It's because they have to be one leader, and that leader is Rasulullah. Now, when Rasulullah left this world, it went to whom? Another leader, which is the Imam Ali alayhi salam. So it doesn't mean that Imam Hassan was not qualified. Now, putting it in other words, even normal scholars, you have, let's say, 200 scholars in one room, all right? Now, when Salat al-Dhuhr comes and you want to pray Jama'ah, one of them is going to lead. But that doesn't mean that the other scholars are unqualified. That's why they're not leading. No, they're all qualified. But it has to be one person speaking on behalf of the Muslims. All right? That is where Wilayat al-Faqih comes in. It's not about taking some marjas right over another marja. No. It's about one person designated by the qualified people who can take this role in order to speak on behalf of Muslims. That's what Wali al-Faqih is. All right. Now, look at in our normal life. You have this example in everyday life. Now, when we take a flight, there's always two pilots, right? But the only one controls. The other one doesn't mean that the other one sitting there, he doesn't know how to fly. No, he knows. But it just have to be one person flying the plane at the time. So that is where the concept comes in. And we need that leadership. The problem we have today is lack of leadership. And Wilayat al-Faqih can also help us to have that voice among the Muslim Ummah. That is what I just wanted to add in this.
Jazakumullah khairah. Inshallah, before we turn to Sheikh Ammar, and we'd also like to hear from our dearest Brother Nahidian, we're hoping to wrap up, inshallah, maybe in the next 10 minutes to adjourn the session by 9 p.m. So we just wanted to make that announcement, inshallah, and then we'll try to address as many of the questions that we have remaining before we end. Sheikh Ammar, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, well, just a point in the continuation of sayings of Sayyid Sulaiman and Sheikh Jalil. Wilayat al-Faqih or Wilayat al-Faqih is one of the most important issue in Islam, basically, because it's a base of taqleed. It's a base of taqleed. When we do taqleed means what is the meaning of taqleed? Following of a scholar. We have to follow a scholar because if I'm not following a scholar, I'm not doing taqleed. I don't know how to pray salat. I don't know how to fast. I don't know how to perform my religious deeds. I don't know lots of things about my because if I am not a mujtahid or if I'm not a scholar, then I have to find the opinion of a scholar, a marja taqleed. When we follow a marja, let's say in the day of Qiyamah, if a marja said, you can pray, I mean, just an example, this is just an example, you can pray with the nail polish. And a lady came to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then in the day of resurrection, in the Yawm al-Qiyamah, and she said, I don't know, my marja said do like this, and it was a wrong. So she's okay, she's going to be in Jannah, in heaven, and the marja is going to prove why he gave this fatwa, this decree. So when we follow a faqih, unknowingly, and because I don't know how can I find my decree, how can I find my issue, what opinion of Islam. So for finding the opinion of Islam, I have to follow marja, and this is basically based on wilayat faqih. Faqih has a wilayah on me, authority on me. He explains to me. In the medical science, doctor has wilayah on me. Doctor says, if you're sick, take this pill. I can say to the doctor, I don't like this red pill, give me the blue pill, give me the green pill. No, not blue, not green, this is your pill, and take your pill. And if you don't like it, you can go and become a doctor. Same thing here. In Islam, for our religious deeds, I want to go meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of Qiyamah with my correct deeds. I have done everything in my life correct, and now I'm going to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can say, yes, this is what I did in my every part of my life. I followed a marja taqlid. So when marja says to me, do like this and do like this and do like this, that means it's a wilayah of faqih. He has wilayah on me. But in the way of politics, we have tens of maraja now. We have 5, 7, 10 marja now. Some maraja in Pakistan, some in Lebanon, some in Iraq, and mostly in Iran and Iraq, right? So all of them cannot decide about one thing and talk about one thing. So wilayat al-faqih means when we establish Islamic government based on people's vote. When people vote, like 90% of people of Iran, they vote Imam Khomeini Rizwanullah alayh. And when he established a government, so people, now he is going to have wilayah on people, and he is going to be marja as well. So he is going to be the voice of Muslim nation, as Sheikh Jalil explained here. So we need someone who can take a stand on behalf of Islamic nation. So this is wilayat faqih. Wilayat wali faqih can be a marja or can be a religious leader. Alhamdulillah, this is the point. So we all have to learn wilayat faqih does not mean other maraja are not marja anymore, only wali. No, other maraja are marja, there's no doubt. And wali faqih, maraja give their authority, their political wilayah to one marja. Say, you follow the politics and give decree, give fatwa in the political field, and he becomes a wali faqih in Islamic government. Otherwise, our maraja are our wali faqih.
Jazakumullah khairah. Thank you so much, Sheikh Ammar. Of course, a lot to be said, as Sayyid Kashmiri mentioned.
Exactly correct.
Many of these topics, of course, require at least a session, if not multiple sessions, to parse out the points that we're making. And obviously, many of them are founded on perhaps different legal imaginations, on different theological imaginations. And it's important to understand those. Sometimes we just look at the outcome and say, this person has concluded like this and the other person has concluded like that. Either they don't know what they're talking about, or they're completely in conflict with one another, which makes it even worse. But obviously, in discussions of law, legal theory, theology, Islam, there is interpretive activity and there's scholarship that goes into it. As participants, it's really important that we are wary of that. Brother Nahidan, we also wanted to hear from you. We saw your camera was just on a moment ago. If we can hear from you for maybe a minute or two, inshallah, some reflections before we have a few questions, rapid fire, of the fiqh questions that have been asked, and inshallah we can make dua and conclude. Brother Nahidan, are you with us?
Alhamdulillah, if you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's a blessing to hear the ulama and of course, اختلاف أمتي رحمة, no problem whatsoever. It's one thing about the politics on Islam that you were mentioned. We probably see there was one thing that Sheikh Rasul said. He says we are stuck into the politics, but the politics that has a goal and aim. We know that Ibrahim alayhi salam is the Imam of the whole humanity on the earth. The capital of the earth was actually mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to become the Kaaba. And then we as the Muslim, wherever that we are supposed to establish the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all over the Kaaba. Man hawlaha. So that means Islam is a religion that in its ibadah is a siyasa. and it's in siyasa is a ibadah. When you say Allahu Akbar, well, Akbar of who? Everything. Your boss, your president, your whatever that it is. And you make a ring around the Kaaba. Therefore, that is becomes a siyasa. Finally, if you are involved in the concept of talking about the Palestine and the freedom of this and that by itself is about ibadah. It is true that it's a siyasa, but it is ibadah for the land. So based on that one, if we take it, we are talking about Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Fajr, that he's the follower of Rasulullah, that is Rahmatan lil Alameen. The Alamin will come to Imam Mahdi, hatta tuskinahu ardhakatahu, not America, not Iran, not everywhere, ardhakatahu, until the whole earth will become obedience. So our responsibility is wherever that we are on the earth, do to whatever that you can do. That if, as of course Sheikh Ammar mentioned it, if we know the right path that we are introducing, they find out, they will follow us. So we have to be involved in the politics. If we are not involved in the politics, that means we don't care about the land of Allah to become cleaned up. So whatever that the politics fits in that path of Imam Mahdi, we follow that one. The one that it doesn't fit, we struggle to bring them back into that. After all, America is a beautiful land. For sure, it will become a part of the command of Allah around the Kaaba anyway. So since I don't have time, unfortunately, I have to stop right here. May Allah protect you and bless all of us to discuss it more about these issues.
Jazakumullah khaira. Let's just in respect of time, we wanted to end by 9 p.m. and alhamdulillah, we've seen that not only did we have an excellent turnout, engagement from the community, and of course we are anticipating continued sessions like this forum for questions to come in and for members of the community to participate. We want to acknowledge that many of the questions remained unanswered, perhaps many facets of the questions that our participants were anticipating were not explored. We want to first thank you all for engaging us, for being in conversation with us. We want to thank you all, of course, for being patient with us, but we want to use this, inshallah, as an opportunity for us to be able to come together, ask these questions, and engender dialogue, engender critical thinking, engender an exchange of ideas and approaches. And from that, we also want to grow in our ability to get to know one another and work with one another. Of course, it is very difficult to be efficacious if a group, if a collective do not know each other well and are not able to work with each other well. So with that, we will be saving the questions that did come in. And we hope to organize not only forums in the future in a general nature, but also thematic sessions, inshallah. And before we end, we'd like to have recitation of dua, perhaps dua wahda would be appropriate, and inshallah for us to adjourn tonight's session. Sayyid Kashmiri, would you do us the honor of ending dua? And if any of the other ulama would also like to lead us in dua, we would appreciate that greatly.
No, inshallah, Sayyid Kashmiri, inshallah, he will lead us. I'm sorry to jump in. I really want to appreciate this effort of ulama. I'm sorry if I am coming without any permission from the moderator. The only thing I just wanted to acknowledge this session on the behalf of the community as well as on the scholars, the effort which was put by the respected scholars to have this session. And I would inshallah look forward that we have these sessions more frequently for the community. Inshallah, dua.
Inshallah, jazakumullah khaira. And as we said, we wanted, of course, all the ulama in the DC metro area to join us. Invitations were extended. Unfortunately, some of the ulama were not able to join us. But of course, this is just a start or a continuation, and we hope to grow these programs to grow, inshallah, in the future. Sayyid Kashmiri, if you would do us the honor.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Inshallah. Dua Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وعجل فرج. جزاكم Allah, Sayyid Kashmiri. Sheikh Rasul, if you would also honor us, lead us in dua wahda, we may continue to strengthen our bonds, inshallah, of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of love for the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, beloved family, inshallah.
Sure. Alhamdulillah, we all coming together was actually a manifestation of wahda, and inshallah this bond will continue and will strengthen. Let's recite the al-wahda all together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La ilaha illallah ilahan wahidan wa nahnu lahu muslimun. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره المشركون لا إله إلا الله ربنا ورب آبائنا الأولين لا إله إلا الله وحده أنجز وعدا ونصر عبدا وأعز جندا وهزم الأحزاب وحدا فله الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت ويحيي وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. Again, thank you so much for everyone joining. Back to you.
Jazakumullah khaira. Thank you everyone for your participation. We really appreciate your support. We hope to, inshallah, have programs like this in the near future. We will take note of the questions that were asked, those that were answered fully, partially, or were left unanswered, to make sure that we address them in our future gatherings. And we will also, inshallah, be in communication with you through your respective centers, your masajid, organizations, so that we may not only announce our future programs, but also provide you an opportunity to share your questions through the slide or any other medium that we have, so that we can, inshallah, best serve you in answering the questions, providing reflections and perspective in the most efficient way as possible. Please keep us all in your du'as. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge and to increase us in practice. May Allah hasten the reappearance of our Imam. May Allah strengthen our bonds, that we represent a united front, that we can work together to understand what our responsibilities are and address them. May Allah, inshallah, remove the afflictions of all those who are being oppressed in the world. May Allah send healing and wellness to all of those who may be ill. May Allah remove all of the financial burdens and difficulties, all of the sociological, all of the social, all of the familial, and all of the ethical, moral, and behavioral problems that we have. Allah protect us, protect our families, protect our community. Allah purify us and make us sincere in our practice, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sayyid Suleiman,
لبيك سيدنا.
did you see my text?
In
If we leave this session, we are going to lose all those questions here in the note
Yes.
section. Can you download it because you are the admin?
Yes, I think so. I think we can make sure that we save these questions, inshallah.
I tried, it didn't work with me.
Yeah, let me check with our administrators. I think we can do that.
And I think we're also free to perhaps end the live streaming service too.
Yeah, if you were able to copy them, please share it with us, please.
Inshallah. Barakallah.
Thank you, everyone.
جزاكم الله خيرا. في أمان الله. السلام عليكم.
عليكم ورحمة الله. Thank you very much. في أمان الله, everybody.
جزاكم الله. Thank you, Sheikh Omar. في أمان الله. السلام عليكم.
Thank you very much.
الأخلاق في أمان الله. Thank you so much. السلام عليكم.
Yeah, thank you. Special thanks to Sayyid Sayyid Sulaiman, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Barakallahu fikum.
جزاكم الله.
Thank you very much, Sayyid Sulaiman.
جزاكم الله.
أنتم.
Assalam.